The other night, I had the pleasure of attending an event celebrating Basil Adra's Oscar win for the documentary No Other Land. I had an amazing time. It was an extraordinary outpouring of love from LA's Palestinian community, and I felt very welcomed. It was the best party I'd been to in years. So I was confused when the next day I woke up to social media going crazy over a controversy surrounding the Oscar win, and particularly the speeches. Well, it turns out that a sizable percentage of pro-Palestinian activists are livid that the film's co-creator, Yuval Abraham, is an Israeli, and that he used his Oscar speech to both sides the issue of Palestine, making reference to the crime of October 7th and advocating for a two-state solution. These activists are calling the film and the buzz surrounding it normalization of the Israeli apartheid occupation regime. I really understand where this criticism is coming from, but with a few notable exceptions, most of this criticism that I've seen on the internet has come from Western activists, many of them white and almost all of them having never set foot in Palestine, often from accounts that tend to take a very absolutist, all-or-nothing approach to politics, and in particular, the subject of Palestine. This was very much contrasted by the sentiment of a lot of my Palestinian friends, particularly those who do live or have lived in Palestine and had to deal with that occupation their entire lives. There was certainly not a uniform sentiment, but a lot of them saw this as a huge win. One such individual, a 48 Palestinian, called out this kind of negative commentary in a post. She said, and I'm paraphrasing the Arabic here, "Spare us your lofty ideals and your attitude of normalization if you have never lived in Palestine or experienced its daily reality. Stay in your homes," she wrote, "in your boring foreign universities, with all of your academic research on the dismantling of colonialism in English. Leave the people of the country who are in the country to struggle on how they see fit." I really resonated with this statement because, as far as I see it, the bottom line is that a Palestinian man got on stage in front of one of the most Zionist crowds in the world and declared Israel to be an apartheid regime that was ethnically cleansing his people. 1 billion people watched him do this. Israelis were livid. Zionists had a full-on meltdown on social media. They were beside themselves with rage. That is not normalization. That is disruption. That is a direct challenge to the hegemony that has dominated conversation on the subject of Palestine for decades. That was an impossible thing to imagine just 1 year ago when the Jewish director Jonathan Glazer received intense criticism simply for drawing attention to the plight of Gazans in his acceptance speech. Some valid criticisms of Yuval Abraham have emerged, and some of them are warranted. But I think a lot of people, especially those who have not seen the film, do not understand the extent to which Yuval Abraham has directly participated in protective presence operations in the West Bank. How he has put his body on the line for Palestinians, and also how, as a journalist, he has directly contributed to uncovering evidence that will be used against the Israeli government in war crimes trials. Basically, he's about the best that you can get in terms of an Israeli who considers himself still something of a liberal Zionist. And we all know that Hollywood would not have let Basil anywhere near that stage without an Israeli co-signing the project. All that to say, when Zionists are furious, when Israeli officials are losing their minds and having public breakdowns on Twitter, and calling this an Oscar for Hamas, we are seeing the narrative collapse of Israel's propaganda machine in real time. That alone should be a huge cause for celebration. And it was at this party that I attended. We were dancing and singing and jumping with joy at what this represented for the Palestinian movement. There's a time for pushing the conversation further and harder. There's a time for being circumspect about who we consider to be our allies. But there is also a time for joy, a time to recognize when the ground is shifting beneath our feet, a time to celebrate when the voices of the oppressed break through the conspiracy of silence established by the oppressor and shift the narrative. God knows these kind of moments are rare of late. When they come, we should celebrate them. As far as I see it, this was a moment of unprecedented visibility for Palestine. So let's not miss the forest for the trees. We should unite in celebration while continuing to criticize all of the ways in which liberal Zionism tends to whitewash the crimes of the Israeli occupation. Please do not take my word for this. I am a straight white American male who happens to also be making a film in the West Bank. But I highly recommend running all of your takes about Palestine by Palestinians who are living in Palestine or have lived in Palestine. And if you notice that some of them are genuinely celebrating what an accomplishment this is for Palestinian visibility, then maybe it's not your place to put them in their place. I am embarrassed about my own blind spots on so many things surrounding this issue a year and a half ago, and I probably will be embarrassed by my blind spots a year from now. But I cried happy tears on Oscar night for the first time in a while, and there are a lot of people who felt the same way. And I think we need to take every victory, no matter how imperfect, as a cause for joy and celebration, because that is what is going to power our movement and enable us to challenge the power structures that are keeping our friends oppressed.